Get ready for the countdown. 10.
It's driving me insane.
9.
Gotta get the fuck out of LA.
8.
Don't swerve in my lane. Don't swerve in my lane.
7.
Our heart begins to suffer with the soul that's given up.
6.
You should've known better to fuck with someone like me.
5.
Out here on planet zero, we live like no tomorrow.
4.
Oh, give me something to take the edge off.
3.
You out of pocket. 2 ATMs, you stepping to what? You out of pocket.
2.
I fell in love with an emo girl. All I want is an emo girl.
1.
Been a long time since I made a new band. Waiting on another black summer to win.
This is always my favorite This is always my favorite video of the year because I actually get to tell you about the shit I enjoy and I don't have to be miserable talking about the bad shit. But yeah, we gave you the 10 worst albums of 2022 in my opinion in the last video. That only leaves one thing left to give you what I thought were the top 10 albums that I heard in 2022. Now keep in mind, this is a very subjective list. Yours is going to differ from mine, and I didn't listen to everything this year. I narrowed down what I wanted to listen to this year, and I listened to under 50 records. So a lot of this stuff might not be the best of the year, but I heard these records and can judge them and say, this is what I really, really enjoyed. So before you get your panties in a bunch, I'm just giving you that warning right now. I didn't make this list to piss anybody off. It's just because I heard these records and can give fair assessment on them. So, yeah. Without further ado, let's just get into it and start off from the top of the list at number 10.
10.
So, I know this record is kind of very 50-50 to me, but compared to their last record, I mean, it's not that bad, is it? Panic at the Disco return with Viva Las Vengeance. It's their first album in 4 years, the longest it's ever taken them to follow up a record. There was a lot of shit that went on, and to be honest, yeah, this is definitely way better than I thought it was ever going to be, considering, you know, Death of a Bachelor I had no problem with, but when he got to Pray for the Wicked, there was definitely just, like you could tell the sellout was fully happening, and it didn't feel like a full band anymore at that point. Sure, it had its good songs, like Same and Saturday Night and High Hopes, but outside of that, it just felt like Brendan Urie. But with Viva Las Vengeance, Panic at the Disco sounds like a band again, guys. Like, this isn't just Brendan Urie over pop beats. There's guitar, there's bass, there's drums, it's all done very nicely. It's left to a more kind of, not necessarily funkier type feel, but, you know, you definitely get more of a Queen vibe with this record, hence, you know, Brendan Urie's vocals kind of like similar to Death of a Bachelor when he was kind of getting more of an inspiration from Frank Sinatra and all this kind of stuff. So with Viva Las Vengeance, I had fun with it. It was the first Panic at the Disco record I remember just from start to finish having fun with. I mean, yeah, there's songs on there that really don't hit it, like Middle of a Breakup is still a cringy song to me, but the title track Kickoff to Local God to Don't Let the Light Go Out, they actually have a lot of just good things about them that I think we were missing from Panic at the Disco, because people are still expecting them to return to what they used to do, and look, that's never going to happen. None of the original members except for Brendan Urie are there. Brendan Urie's going to do what Brendan Urie's going to do, but now he's going to do it with a band behind him, and that's kind of what I'm excited about is, you know, maybe these band members that we're talking about that we see tour with him and all that, maybe they'll become more official members down the line, even though they kind of quietly are, but, you know, I just felt like this is the Panic at the Disco record we at least needed, because it shows you that it's still Panic at the Disco and not just Brendan Urie. I mean, yeah, with every band comes the popular members, so Brendan Urie, it's still going to be Panic at the Disco, Brendan Urie, blah, 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 but there's no excuse for them saying this is a Brendan Urie solo project, because it doesn't feel like that. It feels like they were a band again. They got everybody involved in different ways and made their most enjoyable album in years.
9.
9 was an album that kind of came out later in the year but made my deadline, and indie rock for me has been a hit or miss genre. Like, when it's really bad, it's really bad, but when it's good, my goodness does it hit well, and always been one of those bands that have just been able to just do so well. So when I heard their new album, Blue Rev, was coming out, I knew I had to give it a shot, because these were one of those indie bands that I just took a liking to since I first heard them around 2018-ish, I think was the first time I listened to them. I made my first listen video to them, and I think it was around that time. And I just remember being blown away with what I heard, because it was so atmospheric and yet so just well produced, well put together. The instrumentation goes so well. There's synths, and Molly Rankin's voice, I think, fits well on occasion in some places. It's actually really fits the genre that they do. And with this new album, I think from start to finish, you're just left in awe as to how atmospheric and eerie they're able to make this thing. Like, there was really no song I remember hearing on that record where I go, man, this really brings the record down. Like, every single song was its own thing, and it brought something new to the table, and that was what was so interesting about it. And it was just probably better than expected and worth the 4-year wait that we had to wait for, because this record was kind of delayed and pushed back a lot because the band is Canadian, and a lot of them were in different areas and couldn't really get together and do a lot of things, couldn't record, do all this, that, and the other, had family emergencies. But when they finally were able to sit down and make this record, they were able to just do a fantastic job and make one of the best records of the year.
8.
So, apparently, this is going to be the last Slipknot album. Not because they're breaking up or anything. The band has said that that's not the reason why. It's just they've said that they're at the point in their careers where they feel like they don't need to make full records now that they're out of their record deal with Roadrunner. They're basically free to do anything they want, and from what I heard, the plan is now after this they're going to release singles and maybe mash them onto some small EPs here and there. But as for this album, The End So Far, this is going to pretty much be the official last full-length Slipknot album. And for what it is, I mean, it's fine. I still think I would prefer We Are Not Your Kind over this, but it still brings that heaviness you want from Slipknot to the more, I guess you can say, alternative side, where Corey kind of uses his singing voice and all this. Like, again, We Are Not Your Kind had the more memorable songs, but with The End So Far, I feel like the experimentation with this, I'm kind of glad it didn't sound similar to its predecessor. I'm glad they were able to twist and do different things. It kind of almost sounded like something you get from Point 5, The Great Chapter, and All Hope Is Gone mixed together, but it also felt like its own thing, and I think that's what made this record so well put together, so well produced, was that it was just able to do a bunch of different things. And sure, there may have been a couple songs where I was like, yeah, I wasn't feeling that, but it wasn't too much. Like, it was maybe like 1 or 2 songs, and outside of that, everything else was just kind of passable. From the Dying song to Yen to the Chapel Town Rag, it was nice to hear that Slipknot can still do different things and accomplish things differently and still have the fan base follow them. Even though some of their old school fans were kind of like, this is their worst record, it's not as heavy, blah, 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 yeah, like those people, they don't look at the art form, they just look at if it's heavy or not. By far, this is probably the most experimental Slipknot record, and like I said, We Are Not Your Kind was real experimental. I don't know why I pointed at the poster, that's not what I was doing, but whatever. But with The End So Far, they just experiment with so many different things, some things that we've never even heard from them before, and it's kind of refreshing to the ears, if we're being honest.
7.
There was one artist that went from pop to pop punk that I feel did it right. And of all people to do it correctly, it was Demi Lovato.
I'm alive by the skin of my teeth. I survive when it got on.
Yeah, look, I know she was technically like pop punk back during her Disney days or whatever, but that was Disney pop punk, so it's like, whatever. And I've never been a fan of her pop direction. I really just, I don't know, she's never really caught my attention with it. But when I heard she was doing more of a alt-rock kind of pop punk type record called Holy Fuck, I thought to myself, okay, sure, fine, we'll check it out. And no pun intended, but holy fuck, this thing was probably the best like pop punk record to date that came out this year, and I'm not even over exaggerating, because she didn't stick to the same cliche bullshit that we've come to know from pop punk's return the past couple of years. She was actually talking about mature topics and doing it in this just genuine way. Like, it felt genuine, and the way she's such a talented singer. I will never take that away from her, and she showed off her vocal talents here. Like, there was just some times where I was really blown away with where she was able to go vocally, and she even did some things that I didn't even know she can do vocally. So, it was just like I was hearing a completely different artist, and I was seeing her transform right before her eyes, and I wouldn't mind if she sticks down this path going along with her next project. Like, I really hope she does, because this is what I expect when people say they're going to do pop punk nowadays. This mature sound that doesn't sound generic, and it sounds genuine. This is what we need. This is what we need here, not MGK or whatever the hell Avril Lavigne decided to do, or Youngblood or Black Bear, because that shit is just plain and boring and really not cool. But with Demi Lovato, you just feel it. You feel that passion there, and it feels serious, and you're just caught up in the things she's trying to tell you. I mean, she has been through a lot in her life, and she just sang from the heart, and that's what made this thing so great. And I just can't believe that we're in 2022 and I can say I found a Demi Lovato album that I actually enjoy.
6.
It's funny. This album was #1 for the longest time, but I guess as time went on, I realized this is a good album, but I don't think it's in the top 5. Korn with Requiem. This is an interesting Korn record because it's only 9 tracks long. It's their shortest record to date, but it's also definitely not their most experimental, but one of the ones where I think they do a little bit more, because they took more of an alternative rock route with this. Yeah, there's heavy moments again, and you still get the Jonathan Davis growl and even the scat at the end of On the Worst It's On Its Way, but compared to the last record, the Nothing that came out, where I think they put the emphasis more on being heavy and whatnot, this record just kind of takes rhythm into effect, and also I think has better choruses than the last record had, and I was grooving along to a lot of these tracks. I mean, from the beginning song Forgotten to the end song The Worst Is On Its Way, I feel like it does its job very well, and for it being as quick as it is, nothing feels bloated, nothing feels out of place. I guess I could say the only song I really didn't like that much was, I think it's called Broken and Beaten, or Hopeless and Beaten, or something like that. But even that was just kind of like, yeah, it's okay. Everything else on this record, I dig. Lost in the Grandeur grew on me. Start the Healing was my favorite song of last year, and it was just an absolute banger. It still is now. I think that Korn at this point in their career, they don't have to be this heavy and unusual band. They can still have their signature sound, but they can do different things with it. Plus, I think because it was Fieldy that had to leave the band because of issues going on, so they're down a band member. There's only 4 people now instead of 5, so they kind of did have to change this for it to work, and I feel like the sound that they were able to go with and the direction that they took this in definitely made this record good in a sense, because if they would have tried to have stuck with what they did the last record without one of their band members, I don't feel like it would have worked as well. But now that they were a 4-piece for this one, and they decided to go more rhythmic and focus more on the choruses, it definitely made for a pretty good Korn record.
5.
Concept records are kind of being left on the leeway nowadays. I remember back in my day, especially when you listen to a lot of rock albums, concept records were like this big thing. These are records that tell a story from start to finish about a certain thing, certain character, made up, whatever. But nowadays you don't see that much. It might still pop up every so often, but again, it's basically non-existent at this point. But Shinedown decided to do one, and yeah.
Out here on planet Zero, we live like no tomorrow. I think we
I remember I first listened to Planet Zero, and I wasn't too fond of it. I thought, man, there's way too many interludes on this thing. I mean, you can cut the 20 tracks down to 11 if you just combine these interludes with some of these songs. Like, part of me understands the point of an interlude, but why can't it be connected to one song is the point I'm trying to make here. That way, it just doesn't feel like, you know, you're trying to fill in the track listing. Not that I think Shinedown needed a 20-song track listing, but like I said, it just, I think, would flow better if the interludes were just combined with the songs that they're leading into and whatnot. But overall, Shinedown, this is definitely not as good as Attention, but it still does its job, and Shinedown's still showing you that they still got the power to make these politically charged songs. I mean, the title track on this one was absolutely powerful, and I remember hearing it and going, okay, yeah, this is definitely Shinedown, and this is what I come to expect from them. But also they reinvented the wheel a little bit on this record as well, and it was just, it was a sight to see, and I was glad that I gave this record a chance, because I really wasn't fond of, you know, what they were trying to do, I guess, at first, but I had to listen to really see my feelings on this, and my feelings are that it's a decent record, a good concept record that I would definitely recommend to anybody.
4.
Well, it had been a while for this band. It's been 6 years up until this point that they had released a record, and they brought back one of their band members, that being John Frusciante, and they decided we aren't going to drop one, but 2 records this year. Now, the second record, Return of the Dream Canteen, did not make this list, mainly because I feel like it felt like leftovers from the album we were going to talk about, because they were scared to put them on there because it was a different sound than what we're used to from them, or maybe it was just not different sound, but I think because they experimented a little bit more with those songs, they weren't sure how people would take them, so they decided to split them up in 2 records, and when you get to the first record that came out this year, it's did its job.
been a long time since I made a new band, waiting on another black summer to win.
Unlimited Love came out in April, and I remember hearing the song Black Summer, which was the first song we heard from this album, the comeback song for this band, and I loved it from the beginning. I just knew John Frusciante coming back, we would get that magic from RHCP that we had been missing for a while, because people misconstrued that I didn't like Josh Klinghoffer in the band. Thought he was fine, he was nice, but listening to the 2 albums he was on, and even some of the singles that came out, you can definitely feel the presence of John missing, as a lot of those songs didn't really stick well as they aged. But with this, I feel like there's going to be songs down the line, even though 17 tracks long, that just really, really go well, and Black Summer's just the tip of the iceberg from it kicking off to the finale. It's really just what you expect or want from the Red Hot Chili Peppers now, and I feel like it can keep the new fans and the old fans both happy, and the fact that they were just willing to make a typical record without any concept to it at all was pretty nice. Not that any of their other albums had any concept to them, but you figure with 17 tracks, there'd be some sort of story they were trying to tell, but it was just Anthony Kiedis singing about the shit that he's gone through in his life, and how he's coping now, how he's changing as a person, and whatnot, and just also, I guess, talking about other people in life that he's seen struggle, and wish that he could help, or maybe he could have done something differently, all that. So, again, it just felt like a genuine record, and a nice, funky release at that.
3.
Man, we waited and we got it.
You out of pocket. 2 ATMs, you stepping or what? You out of pocket. Who you think they talk about us?
I was definitely scared for this record, because you gotta look at Kendrick Lamar. He was coming off a string where he released Good Kid Mad City, To Pimp a Butterfly, and Damn, which are 3 records from the 2010s rap-wise that I think are seen as, like, the best. And him waiting this long to release a record, you're kind of like, alright, well, how does he follow up another great record, and will this thing even be worth the wait? And I'll tell you this much, I don't know if the record was worth a 5-year wait, but it's still Kendrick Lamar giving you his best, and he did another fine goddamn job. And I don't think it's as good as T-Pap or even Good Kid. I think it's right around the area of Damn, where, you know, he kind of, you know, experiments with different things as he usually does with every record, but it's still Kendrick Lamar talking about these topics and just being able to rhyme and do them in such a excellent way. I mean, there's that one song on there, I can't remember the name of it, where people did get on him for dropping the, you know, the F slur in there, but when you realize the meaning of the song, you understand why it's in there. It's not just Kendrick saying it to say it. He's saying, you know, I grew up in a time where we weren't very understanding of, you know, people who were gay or bisexual, lesbian, transgender, and that word was thrown around because it wasn't seen as an insult. It was just more seen as like, hey, this is just what you call them. But nowadays we know that word is insulting, and you don't really say that unless you mean it out of hatred. And he was just getting that point across, that there was people in his life that would just say it, whether they were in public or whatever, whereas now, you know, we're not going to use that word, and he's learned over the years that it's not okay, and he's a changed person from what he used to be. And I think, you know, listening to that song again for this particular reason, to see if I wanted to put this album on the list, it definitely made me understand that more, because, you know, when you sing the song, you're not going to want to sing along to that part, but you become more understanding as to where you came from and why it's on there. And I feel like this whole record just reflects his feelings on things. Again, it has a lot to do with him changing, and a lot of the political topics that he talks about still remain on here. And again, he still just does an excellent job with it. The beats that he puts on here, granted, there are some times where I feel like the chorus can be a little bit weak, but with Kendrick, you know, you just know that there's not going to be one particular song where everything about it is bad. There's always something good, and with Mr. Moral and the Big Steppers, he definitely took a big step and did an excellent job.
2.
The runner-up for Album of the Year might surprise you, might not, I don't know, because this was an artist that I didn't really find until this year, because somebody told me about her, and I went back and listened to, I think she had an EP she released last year, and I listened to it just so I can go into this record understanding what to expect, or maybe, you know, if there was going to be some sort of big change from this EP to this record. And Maggie Lindman is interesting, I will say that much. Because her EP and her album are so different, because I feel like her EP is more pop-leaning, whereas you get to this album, Sucker Punch, and it's not really strictly pop-punk. I mean, it's got that in there, but it's also like alt-rock with a little bit of metal mixed in some places. Her voice is just so unique in this way, where I feel like the way she structured these songs fit it very well, because I don't necessarily see her as like a fantastic singer, but she's a good singer, and with the songs that were put out here, she was able to show that she could wail here and there, and she definitely has a voice fit for that more kind of like, I don't want to say symphonic type of rock, because it's not what this was, but you can definitely see her in this genre sticking for a while. I just was so blown away with what she was able to do, and do it in short amount of time. I mean, these songs are short to the point. It's got that verse, chorus kind of feel to it, but it's catchy, and even the songs that do feel more poppy definitely stick as well, because they just have they have the right production to them, and they feel well put together. And with Sucker Punch, this is an album that I think has really attached me to this artist, to where the next release that she puts out, I'm definitely going to check it out, because I'm going to be intrigued to see if she sticks in this direction or decides to do something completely different from what we have here. But all I know is this record is going to be on my playlist for a long, long time. So, before we get to the number one pick, we got to take a look at 5 honorable mentions that barely missed the list. Now, like the worst albums of the year, the honorable mentions list will feature albums that I didn't review, but I did listen to, and mainly the reason I didn't give them a proper review was just because, you know, I liked them, but they didn't give me a whole lot to talk about where I felt like I could put it in album review form. And with me not reviewing the album in video form, it would just be unfair for me to put these on the list. So I just figured I can shout them out. That way you guys know that I did listen to them and I did like them, but for the sheer fact that they weren't put in video form, I just couldn't put them on the proper list. So let's do this in rapid fire and in no particular order.
That's why I arrived, your sex got here.
How come nobody told me about Mitski sooner? Because man, this was awesome. Look, Ghost is Ghost, whether you think they're rock or metal. Just enjoy the fact that they can make good songs.
'Cause I'll beg for you.
I gotta say, I underestimated Charlie XCX a bit because this is pop at its finest. Good old Rammstein. Just when you need to be freaked out by music, they come a-knockin'. But, you know, you get freaked out in a good way. So, you know, good on ya.
In this world, it's just us.
Okay, I'm starting to get scared for Harry Styles because, again, this is a step down from the last record, and his last record was a step down from his debut record. So, does that mean record number 4 is going to be on the worst list? I don't know, I hope not, but Harry Styles has definitely been at least consistently good since the One Direction breakup. Alright, with the honorable mentions out of the way, it is time to give you what I think was the best album in 2022. This is an album that may come as a surprise because this band was more known to do alt rock, garage rock on their first 2 records. But if you listen to their second record, you'll kind of see that change was teased for what we have here. And for record number 3, the garage rock is completely gone into more of a pop rock type sound. However, I think this fits the band better than what they were doing before.
Gotta get the fuck out of LA. Run through the sun before it burns my brain.
Hear me out here, but is it just me, or did Lydia Knight's vocals sound so much better with this genre of music? Like, I've always thought her voice was cool and all, but she never really showed off her full range, her full talent when the Regrets were doing the whole, you know, alt rock, garage rock thing. But now that they're doing more of like a pop rock, synth pop type, she went higher with her vocals and less raspy in some areas. You know, it felt like you were listening to something completely new. But I mean, my God, they're still making bangers. Anxieties at a Time, Monday, That's What Makes Me Love You, La-Di-Da. I mean, it's just, I feel like this suited them so much better. Like, listening to this record start to finish, I just went, you know, it's different, but somehow they got better. Not that I hated what they were doing before, but this felt more consistent than I think their first 2 projects did, because their first 2 projects, they always had songs where I was like, yeah, I don't know about that one, but with this one, even though there were some songs that kind of, you know, bored me just a little bit, I felt like I was having fun with this record. I was able to dance a little more, sing along, the choruses were a lot more catchier, and they just seemed to do everything right, and I feel like the rest of the band was able to show off other talents that maybe we didn't even get to see from the first 2 records as well, along with Lydia, with her vocals and all this stuff. It was a nice change, even though most people are going to say, oh, it's them selling out, this, that, and the other. The Regrets were never one of those bands that were big to begin with, so why would they sell out when it's not like they're like one of the biggest bands in the world? They were just trying something different now that they're all older. Lydia Knight's in her 20s now. Maybe she is done with the whole, you know, edgy garage rock type thing. She wants to sing about more serious topics and show off more of the influences that she has pretty much talked about throughout her time in the band since she started her music career. So Further Joy just further shows you that the Regrets can go any which direction and do an excellent job with it. Well, that does it. I hope you guys had a fantastic 2022, and heck, you can even tell me in the comments below what made your 2022 fantastic, at least music-wise. What were your favorite albums that came out this year, and what would you put as your album of the year? I'd really just be intrigued to see what you guys had, because like I said, you guys have probably listened to other albums that I haven't, and maybe they're better than the ones that I mentioned. I don't know, but until then, that's it for me. Stay safe out there, have a happy holidays, and I will see you all in 2023.